guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. I'm not sure if you can tell, but my voice a little bit raspy. Woke up with a raspy voice, a little kind of itch in the throat, a little scratch in the throat. Anybody like me where any sort of under the weather or ailment, and I'm like, oh crap, I have COVID now. So fingers crossed that I am just maybe a little cold, maybe allergies, maybe a sinus infection. Anyway, today we're gonna start the video by opening up 10 quick shards here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Good luck. Hopefully you had better luck than I did on your shard pulls. I released my shard opening video where I opened a bunch of shards, like 150 plus, a couple days ago. So check that one out in case you missed that one, excuse me. In today's video, what we're gonna do is actually rank the top 5 nukers of every rarity, excluding common. So uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary, my 5 favorite nukers in each category. Now, nuker is defined, for this video's sake at least, as champions that have at least one strong AoE attack in their kit. Of course, a lot of these champions are going to have multiple strong AoEs in their abilities. So let's go ahead and just jump to it here. Let's start out with the uncommons, and we can just go right over to Sacred Order and cover my favorite uncommon in the game, Armiger. So Armiger, we've done a whole champion guide on him. I'll include a bunch of the champions. I promise I'll remember to actually include this in the show notes today, but in the description of this video I'll include a bunch of guides for the guides that I've done on champions that we discuss in this video. Armiger is a beast. His damage is based on defense, which is really nice because he's an epic champion. He's very squishy, and then lay to rest, damage inflicted is proportional to defense and increases according to enemy max HP. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. Wow, this is an insane ability on a 2-turn cooldown for an uncommon champion. Need I say more? I think that's all we have to say about Armiger. He's definitely in a class of his own when we talk about epic champion, or epic. He feels like epic in a way. Well, when we talk about uncommon champions in this game. Next, we're going to go over to barbarians. Let's talk about a few of my favorites. There's actually 3 barbarians that make my top 5. One is Shield Guard. Shield Guard has a really cool A2, attacks all enemies, again, on a 2-turn cooldown on battle stance when you book him up. Obviously, uncommon's much easier to book up, and plus you can get duplicates as well, just from mystery shards. Attacks all enemies, fills his champion's turn meter by 20% on each critical hit, and damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So again, he scales pretty well. 10-24 base defense for an uncommon champion is not too bad. He's not endgame, but he's definitely a viable early game uncommon champion. Definitely belongs on the list. Now, next one is Outlander, not to be confused with Outrider over here to the right of Shield Guard, but to the left of Shield Guard, Outlander. Outlander has a pretty hard hitting for an uncommon on a 3-turn cooldown. Talisman of Power, attacks all enemies, has a 50-75% chance when booked of decreasing the turn meter also by 30%. It's a really nice ability on 3-turn cooldown out of a uncommon champion. Next up, we have it is Zephyr Sniper. So Zephyr Sniper, another solid uncommon champion. On her A1, she's an AoE. So an AoE on the A1 is definitely really solid. Attacks all enemies, 15% chance of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on each target by 1 turn. Then she has a continuous heal on her A2, and that's it. That's her whole kit. And then the 5th uncommon that I wanted to mention in today's video is going to be a Dark Elf, and it is my girl Sniper. Now, Sniper is a very solid champion. She's a double hitter AoE, right? On a 4-turn cooldown, 2 hits on all enemies, has a 10% chance, 25 when booked, of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn. She's an attack-based champion, so she is much squishier than the other champions on this list. That is one of the problems with Sniper. The other problem with Sniper is, although in a vacuum she's a pretty solid champion, especially for an uncommon again, the issue is Elaine is better, and she's very accessible, rare champion, one of the starting rare champions. So that is Sniper, though. I think she deserves the nod. Man, a lot of reviews on this champion. Apparently, there's a lot of Sniper fans out there in the game. Okay, let's move on to the rares where things get a little bit more interesting. Let's actually stay in Dark Elves. Coldheart, she's known for her single target ability. The Heartseeker ability does millions of damage onto bosses, Spider, well, any boss in the game. However, her A2 is actually pretty hard hitting as well. It's not the strongest nuke in the game, but Art of Pain attacks all enemies, has a chance of landing the decreased accuracy, the poison as well if they're under heal reduction. All things being equal though, on a 3-turn cooldown in AoE, it's a pretty good multipliers on Art of Pain. She can be used as a boss killer with Heartseeker and as a kind of a trash wave killer with her Art of Pain, and then she has 4-timer on her A1. Beautiful, one of the best champions out there in the entire game for Fire Knight. Next up, we can stay here. We're going to give a big shout out to Kale. Kale's ability, Acid Rain, top 5 multiplier for rare champions in the game, attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed. Really solid ability in Acid Rain, and when you get to the mid-game in Raid Shadow Legends, you can actually take off those crit rate gauntlets on Kale, try to get him in crit damage gauntlets. That will really exponentially increase the damage that he is dealing out with his Acid Rain ability, and you already have the 15% extra chance on the critical, so you only have to build his crit rate to 85% if you want to go ahead and take advantage of that for Acid Rain. He also has the poison. You guys know Kale's kit, right? He has the poison on the strong version of poison on the A3, weak version of poison on the A1. Next up is going to be a champion that I just did my very first video on. Another one of the starters, Galek, and I was actually very impressed with Galek's damage multipliers on Hellraiser. Hellraiser attacks all enemies, another extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, and places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns, all on a 3-turn cooldown. You can also book it up to get an extra, 30, 25, 15, 25%. Jeez, come on, dude. You gonna add? You gonna learn how to add before you learn how to do YouTube, Ash? 25% damage with the books there. He deals a lot of damage with this. We were critting for, close to 100k, and it's an AoE attack, so we're getting like anywhere from 70 to 90k with this attack in the build that we had him in. Hellraiser's just a very, very hard-hitting ability, so it definitely deserves a shout-out there. We mentioned her earlier, guys, but the High Elf, another starting champion. All the starting champions, I could easily have put Aethel on this list as well, because her Divine Blades, I believe, hits very hard, but I like the attacks all enemies 2 times in Elaine's kit. She also has the self buff, increased crit rate, and the extra chance of getting a critical hit on her A2, but really attacks all enemies on Valley of Death 2 times is very valuable. It makes her viable for maybe a stun set, and just having those 2 hitters on there. I'm a big fan of Elaine. Again, compared to Spider, who we talked about in the uncommons, I think that Elaine definitely takes the cake there, and I prefer her just very, very slightly over Aethel, but I don't know. I guess I prefer Aethel for like Fire Knight because she has a multi-hitter on the A1, Elaine in other dungeons in the game, and probably as an arena Nukers. So we're going to go ahead and give Elaine a shout out, and then I have a tie. I have 2 ties in this video, guys. I couldn't decide, man. I apologize. I couldn't decide. It's really a cheap way of just saying top 6 in a couple of categories, but Soulbound Bowyer has the AoE on the A1, which makes her an incredibly viable campaign farmer, and then she has all these ignore defense abilities, 75% ignore defense on her A2, 75% a chance of depleting the target's turn meter, and 25% chance of inflicting a critical hit extra on the A3, and she has that extra 25% chance of inflicting a critical hit on all of her abilities as well. So really, really nice kit from Soulbound Bowyer, and of course, I gotta give a shout out to my man. We're talking about Soulbound. She has the AoE on the A1 and 2 hard-hitting single target abilities on the A2, A3. Bellower just has AoEs on every single ability. A1, A2, and A3 are all attacks all enemies, so how could I not include Bellower on a list of my top 5 nukers, although his multipliers are not that insane compared to some of the other champions that we gave a nod to on this list. But Bellower can be built out as a nuker. I prefer to build him out in stun gear. Put him in the stun set, man, and you're getting AoE attacks every single time, each with an 18% chance or 23% chance if you have Fearsome Presence Mastery of inflicting that stun. So a great CC, a great debuffer, a great nuker as well from Bellower. Now let's go ahead and move on to the epics here. We are rolling in today's video, guys. Let's go ahead and start out with Zargala. Zargala is an incredible champion because she has his crack armor ability, attacks all enemies 3 times. Not only are you hitting them 3 times, but you're also after the first hit getting a 75% chance of when booked of getting a big version of decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Only downside on a 4-turn cooldown, but guess what? On her A2, Devastate. If you kill an enemy, it instantly activates that cracked armor ability again, immediately. So boom, kill an enemy, another cracked armor comes down without increasing the cooldown of this ability. Zargala, you guys know her, definitely one of the most popular epic champions out there in the game. There's another one in this category, it's Seer. Seer's Karma Burn ability can hit for 200 to 350 to 400k damage. So basically, it strips away all the buffs from all of your allies and all the enemies. So all the buffs from everybody on the battlefield are removed. and the damage scales according to the number of buffs that were removed. It's insane. It says inflict less damage to bosses, which is true, but it still can hit for 200 plus K damage to bosses. Seer is a dangerous champion because she's stripping away all of your continuous heals, all of your increased defenses, all of whatever buffs that you have on your team. So you have to be very careful with her, but of course she belongs on this list because she hits incredibly hard. Next up is a champion that, you know, some of you guys might give me some crap for this one, but I don't care. It's a undead horde, not Skinwalker. I did a guide on him the other day. Husk. Listen, man, we're talking about AoE nukers. We have to talk about Despair. Despair attacks all enemies. It has a 35% chance 60% chance when booked to land a stun on everybody, and damage inflicted is proportional to enemy max HP. Again, the multipliers on this are not bad. They're pretty good against just waves in dungeons, but when you get to the boss, we saw him hit in my video for close to 600k, for around 600k. That's a lot of damage for a nuker, so I have to give him a spot on this list, man. I really like Husk. And then he has a Retaliate, a pretty hard-hitting A3 on a 3-turn cooldown. Damage increases according to this champion's current HP. The only weird thing about him that we did mention in that video is he has this attack on the A3 based on HP, and then this attack based on enemy max HP, and then the A1 based on attack. So kind of a weird champion to kind of gear out, but you know, better be safe than sorry. Just stack him with a decent amount of HP and a ton of crit damage, and you'll be looking A-okay. Next one is going to be, let's go over to Night Revenant for a second here. Let's go over to my girl Skullcrown. Of course she's on the list. She's really solid. Only 2 active abilities. Both of them are AoE attacks. She also is great for the arena with the speed aura. A lot of people run her as a speed lead in the arena, excuse me, because of her aura. There we go. Learn to add and learn to speak. Let me just add those check marks of things I'm going to do for future videos. She also has that annoying unkillable buff that you guys know about because I'm sure you faced her in the arena, or maybe you use her in the arena. Either way, both of these abilities do hit pretty hard as well. You can see places an extra hit if the target has more than 50% HP on her A1. So definitely a really solid champion with a pretty good multipliers and scalability on her attack at 1509. The last but not least, of course, you guys know I love this champion, man. He is one of my favorite champions. It's Royal Guard, all because of the, not the hamstring, the takedown ability attacks all enemies, damage increases according to enemy max HP. That's right, there's a lot of enemy max HP champions on today's list because they're really good. They hit very, very hard against bosses, and a lot of these champions, such as, again, Coldheart, another champion we're going to talk about, Husk, for example, they have like that dual utility of being great AoE nukers for the minions, for the trash, for the mobs, the first 2 waves of mobs in dungeons, and then they're great against bosses too because of that enemy max HP ability. So that is Royal Guard. Again, with all of these enemy max HP ability champions, crit damage is your #1 stat you're going to be looking for, I guess, behind a crit rate, obviously. So that is Royal Guard. Let's move on to the legendaries, guys. Let's go to the Dark Elves. Rhea actually has the best multiplier, or the second best multipliers in the game, I believe, next to a guy who we'll talk about next. So she has an AoE on the A1, again, with the decreased defense. Man, she is an insane kit. I don't have her. I would love to have her, though. She has an AoE on the A2 as well, and guess what? She has an AoE, that's right, on the A3. She is the bellower of legendary champions, only a lot better. On the A2, she has inflicts 50% more damage against targets under debuffs. This can hit really hard. The Arcane Wave, and Banish can hit incredibly hard on a 6-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, removes all buffs, and then places a 50%, has a 70% chance when booked of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Wow, what a champion she is. Let's go ahead and go to the next one here. This is the guy who has the #1 multipliers in the game, man, and it is Biggin. Biggin, he's big. Look at how, good God, man. He's a beast of a champion, man. AoEs on every ability again, attacks 1 enemy, attacks all enemies 1 time if the first attack is critical, which it always will be. On the forward charge ability, attacks all enemies, has a chance of placing a stun, and a decreased accuracy on the A2. On the A3, attacks all enemies 2 times on a 4-turn cooldown when booked. Decrease the turn meter by 25%. and then has a chance of placing decreased speed for 2 turns. Man, Molten Slag is an incredible ability. Doesn't hit as hard as the forward charge, but it hits 2 times, so it adds up to be more than forward charge in most scenarios. He is incredibly hard-hitting champion with 1575 on his base attack. Next is going to be another top 3, top 5 multipliers in the game. Actually, she has the hardest hitting ability in the game for an AoE attack, but it's not really an AoE, it's kind of an AoE. Cloak of Ages has a 6 times multiplier on it. Attacks, this is her A2 by the way. Attacks 1 enemy, then attacks all other enemies with a second hit. The reason I say it's an AoE but not an AoE is this attacks 1 enemy is a 6-time multiplier. That's insane. However, it's only 60% of the damage of the initial hit on the second hit to all the other enemies. So, however you figure that out, it's a hard-hitting ability, okay? But really, Forge Rhythm is an insane ability. Attacks all enemies, has a chance of placing the stun and the HP burn, places an extra hit on enemies not under stun debuffs. I mentioned this several times before on the channel. I'll mention it again. A lot of players in Platinum Arena build her with very, very low accuracy, not trying to land the stun and the HP burn, which would make her amazing for spiders, for example, but they built her with no accuracy. That way she's not landing the debuffs on the enemies. That's the way she's able to kill Rotos in 1 shot, because she's placing that extra hit, because she's not landing the stun. So that is Trunda. She also has a really cool like increased speed and resistance based on the number of debuffs that she lands. So really, really cool champion in Trunda. Next up is going to be another High Elf champion. And this is the guy that I wanted I still want him, but I wanted him so badly when I started this game. One of my friends pulled Ethos, and I was like, dude, this guy's sick. He has a triple hitter. He has a regular standard AoE attack with 4-turn cooldown on the A3. On the A2, a triple hitter with the Weaken debuff for 2 turns. Granted, the smaller version of Weaken, not the 25, but the 15%. On a 3-turn cooldown, though, and then attacks 1 enemy, has a chance of granting an extra turn on the A1. His kit is pretty straightforward. His base attack is 1608, very, very high there. I love this champion, really solid champion in Ethos. Next up is going to go down to, this is a 2-way tie to end the video. Again, guys, I apologize for these ties, but whatever. It's Foley. So Foley with the Sealed Fate ability attacks all enemies, decreases the turn meter by 15%, then attacks a targeted enemy. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived, so the block revival, very handy, especially for the arena right now, and it hits very, very hard. He also has a 4 times hitter on his A2, which is really nice, and a 4 times hitter on his A1, makes him viable for Fire Knight, although it is an anti-affinity matchup for Fire Knight's 20, so there's that with magic against force. But his tie is actually going to be, I gave a nod to every other based on enemy max HP champion in the game, so we have to give a little love to Septimus as well. Septimus with the Holy Sword ability, especially if he is with full HP because of his passive. Here you go. Damage inflicted by each attack increases by 30% if the enemy's current HP is over 50%. So not full, but as long as the enemy is over 50% HP, that's a 30% extra with the Giant Killer passive, and we're hitting based on enemy max HP anyway, and ignoring shield, and ignoring block damage buffs. This guy is incredible, and you can book him up to get even more damage stacked onto that. The Holy Sword ability is absolutely insane. I wish I had a Septimus. I do not, but that concludes my list of 22 champions thanks to the 2 ties on today's video. Who did I leave out? I left out a lot of great nukers, to be fair. It's tough to pick only 5 in each category. Let me know in the comments below who your favorite nuker in the game is. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.